My name is Derek Davis, and for the past 41 years, I've lived a life that I would call stable. I work as a project manager at a large construction company here in Seattle, Washington. I have my daily routine, my familiar faces, and the work I know inside and out. Life had always felt predictable, and I wasn't complaining about it. I had everything I could want: a successful career, a beautiful home, and most importantly, a wonderful wife. Her name is Lisa. She's 38, a dentist with her own practice. We met years ago, and everything between us just clicked. We both have demanding jobs, but we made it work. We'd spend our weekends outdoors, often hiking the nearby mountains, breathing in the fresh air, and reconnecting with nature. On other days, we'd grab coffee from our favorite cafe in the city and talk about life. There was always a sense of peace and contentment whenever we were together. But recently, things started to feel off. It was subtle at first, almost like a faint, nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Lisa, who used to be so present and attentive, had started spending more and more time at the clinic. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, she's a busy woman. Dentists don't get a lot of free time, and I respected that. But something changed in her routine. She began staying late more often, telling me she had to take care of emergency patients or finish some administrative work. It didn't make sense to me. Lisa had always been so careful about balancing her work and personal life. She would finish her day at a reasonable hour, and we'd enjoy our evenings together. But now, she'd be gone late into the night, sometimes texting me at odd hours, apologizing that she had to stay late for just one more thing. It felt like an excuse, but I wasn't sure why I was feeling this way. I kept telling myself it was just work stress, nothing more. But then, there were the small things. The way she would rush off to grab her phone when I walked into the room, the way she would lower the screen when I asked her what she was doing. Lisa had always been an open book with me, so these little changes made my stomach turn. What was she hiding? What was going on in her life that I wasn't part of? I tried to ignore it for a while, hoping that it was just my imagination. But one night, as I lay in bed alone after a long day of work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept racing. Was she truly at the clinic, or was something else going on? Then, it hit me. Why hadn't I ever thought to check the location on her phone? Lisa had been sending me texts about being at work again, but the last message she sent sounded different. She'd mentioned attending a seminar, a medical seminar that was supposedly running late into the evening. At first, I didn't think much of it. But something inside me urged me to check. I opened the tracking app I'd set up on her phone, just in case of an emergency. To my surprise, Lisa wasn't at the seminar. The location was completely different, way outside the city, in an area I had never heard her mention before. It wasn't even close to the usual places she'd go for work or leisure. My heart started to race. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the pieces started to fit together in a way I couldn't ignore. Why was Lisa lying about where she was? Was she hiding something from me? I had to know. I couldn't sit around and wonder anymore. I grabbed my keys and left the house, heading toward the location that had been flagged on her phone. As I drove, 100 different thoughts ran through my mind. Was she seeing someone else? Was I overreacting? I told myself I was just being paranoid, but the pit in my stomach only grew with each passing mile. When I arrived, I saw her car parked outside a house that looked unfamiliar. I sat there for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts. Was this a coincidence? Maybe she was just helping a colleague, or maybe she had a legitimate reason for being here. I couldn't let myself assume the worst, but I couldn't deny the sick feeling creeping up my spine either. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. A man opened it. His name was Eric, I later learned, a colleague of Lisa's from her practice. I felt my body go cold as I stood there, staring at him. And then, there she was, standing behind him, looking completely caught off guard. Lisa's face went pale as she saw me standing there. She didn't even know how to react. The moment felt like it was frozen in time. I could see the panic in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to find her here. She hadn't expected me to know. I didn't need her to explain. I didn't need to hear the words that were about to come out of her mouth. I already knew. With a voice that barely held itself together, I simply asked, "So this is what you've been hiding from me?" I could hear the hurt in my own voice, but I kept my composure. I wasn't angry yet, just devastated. Lisa tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. The trust was gone. I turned and walked away, knowing that this moment was the end of something I had believed in for so long. I don't remember how I got home that night, but I do remember one thing for certain: I wasn't going to live like this anymore. My world had just shattered, and I knew it was time to face the truth. The next morning, everything felt different. The apartment was eerily quiet, and as I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind was racing. The events of the previous night kept replaying over and over in my head, like a cruel loop that wouldn't stop. Lisa had been lying to me. I had always prided myself on being someone who trusted others, especially those I loved. But now that trust had been completely shattered. I didn't sleep much after I left the house where I found her with Eric. My thoughts kept circling back to her face, the way she looked at me when she opened the door. It wasn't just surprise, it was fear, guilt, and maybe even shame. The worst part wasn't even the fact that she had been hiding something from me. It was the way she seemed so unbothered by the fact that I had caught her in a lie. She wasn't even apologetic at first. It was like she assumed I wouldn't confront her. Like she had gotten so used to living in a world where I didn't ask questions, where everything was just fine. I couldn't stop myself from thinking about it. The more I thought, the more the pieces started falling into place. All those late nights at the clinic. The constant texting and hiding her phone. The time she had spent away from me, both physically and emotionally. It wasn't just one thing. It was the culmination of 100 small moments, each one reinforcing the suspicion that something was wrong. That afternoon, Lisa called me. I didn't answer. I couldn't bring myself to. What could she possibly say to make this right? There was no explaining away what I had seen. She had broken my trust, and once that was gone, everything else felt hollow. I thought about the years we'd spent together, the trips, the laughs, the quiet mornings where we'd sip coffee side by side, content with the simple pleasures of life. How could that be real if she had been hiding something from me all along? Was everything a lie? Was I just a fool who had never seen the cracks in our foundation? The next few days were a blur. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. My colleagues noticed that I was quieter than usual, but I just brushed it off, burying myself in the tasks at hand. But it wasn't just my work that was suffering. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating properly, and all I could think about was how everything had unraveled so quickly. I avoided Lisa's calls. I wasn't ready to talk to her. I didn't even know what I would say. What could I say? That I was heartbroken? That I felt betrayed? Or maybe it was just the emptiness I felt inside, the sense that the life I thought I had built with her was a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest breeze. Then, on the 4th day after the incident, I couldn't avoid it any longer. I walked into the living room and saw her sitting there, waiting for me. She had come to the apartment, even though I had made it clear I didn't want to see her. "Derek, please," she said, her voice shaky. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've lied. But I need you to listen to me. Please." I stood there, looking at her, and for the first time in a long time, I realized how much I didn't recognize her anymore. She was the same person I had married, but everything about her seemed different. Maybe I had changed too. Maybe this wasn't just about what she had done. Maybe this was about the fact that we had both let something slip through our fingers. I'm listening, I said, my voice colder than I intended. I crossed my arms over my chest, standing far enough away that I could still keep my distance. Lisa took a deep breath and began to explain. She said Eric was just a friend, a colleague who had been going through a tough time at work, and she had been helping him. She said it wasn't what I thought. That she never meant to hurt me. She was trying to fix things in her own way, and the seminar was something she had been planning for a while. She had never intended to lie to me. But I didn't buy it. None of it made sense. I couldn't even look at her without feeling angry and betrayed. The more she spoke, the more I realized how much she had manipulated me. She had kept so much from me, and the fact that she was now trying to justify it only made it worse. I don't want to hear your excuses, Lisa, I said, my voice sharp. The truth is, you've lied to me for months, and I can't just pretend that didn't happen. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Maybe I should have, but all I felt was exhaustion. I was tired of being the one who believed. Tired of trying to hold on to something that had been broken for a long time. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she said softly. I just wanted you to know the truth. I didn't want to lose you. I think it's too late for that, I said, my words cutting through the air. I turned and walked out of the room. As I stepped into the hallway, I knew I had to do something to take control of my life again. Lisa had taken so much from me, and I had to find a way to reclaim it. I didn't know how or where to start, but I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. The next day, I filed for divorce. I couldn't live in this house anymore, not with all the memories of a life that no longer felt like my own. I began packing my things, ready to start over. Lisa tried to call me, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear what she had to say anymore. I wasn't interested in reconciliation. I was interested in reclaiming my own peace of mind. I moved into a smaller apartment in the city, away from the home we had shared for so many years. It was a fresh start, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. I focused on my work, threw myself into my projects, and began to rebuild what I had lost. The pain didn't go away overnight, but as time passed, I realized something important. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change how I moved forward. The first few weeks after the divorce papers were filed were some of the hardest days of my life. I thought I was prepared for the loneliness, but nothing truly prepares you for silence. Real silence. The kind that fills every corner of your new apartment and settles into your thoughts until it becomes unbearable. My new place was small, one bedroom, a single couch, and a view of the streetlights outside my window. It was nothing like the home Lisa and I had built together. Back there, every wall, every piece of furniture, carried a memory. Here, the walls were blank, empty, untouched. It should have felt freeing, but it didn't. It felt hollow. I would wake up every morning before dawn, just like I always did, and make coffee. The same way I had for years. But now, there was no one to share it with. No soft hum of Lisa's footsteps coming down the hall, no sound of her brushing her teeth while humming off-key, no morning kiss before we went our separate ways. Just me, and the sound of the coffee machine. I buried myself in work. It was the only thing that made sense anymore. The construction projects demanded my full attention, and in the rhythm of blueprints, meetings, and deadlines, I found a small refuge. But even that began to feel empty after a while. When the workday ended and I drove home, I dreaded the moment I'd open my apartment door and be greeted by nothing but the hum of the refrigerator. At night, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together when everything had started falling apart. Was it my fault? Had I missed the signs? Maybe I'd become too comfortable, too focused on work, too confident that our marriage was unbreakable. I had always thought love was enough. But love, I was learning, isn't a guarantee, it's a choice that both people have to keep making. And somewhere along the way, Lisa had stopped choosing me. One evening, about a month after I moved out, I got a call from a mutual friend, Mark, someone Lisa and I used to hike with. He sounded uneasy when I picked up. "Derek," he said, "I don't want to overstep, but I thought you should know, things aren't going so great for Lisa." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what he expected me to feel. Concern? Satisfaction? Pity? Mark went on, words getting around about what happened. Her patients found out, somehow. A couple of them cancelled appointments. Eric's no longer at the clinic either. It's bad. I took a slow breath, staring out my apartment window. "I see," was all I said. The truth is, I didn't feel happy about it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Lisa had made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. I couldn't bring myself to care beyond that. Not anymore. After we hung up, I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat by the window, and listened to the rain tapping against the glass. The sound was oddly calming, steady and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a city that kept moving, no matter what fell apart inside it. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't think about Lisa as much. I thought about myself. About who I used to be before all this. About the version of me that used to laugh more, who had dreams outside of work, who loved photography, who could lose hours hiking through the forest just to chase a perfect sunrise. Somewhere between marriage and heartbreak, I had lost that man. The next morning, I decided to take a day off from work. I packed a small bag, grabbed my camera, dusty from disuse, and drove toward the mountains. The same ones Lisa and I used to hike. I told myself it wasn't about nostalgia. It was about remembering who I was before everything changed. The drive was long, but the road was familiar. The air grew colder as I climbed higher into the forest. The mist rolled over the trees like slow waves, wrapping the world in a soft, gray calm. When I reached the trailhead, I stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. The scent of pine and earth hit me instantly, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in months. I started walking. My boots crunched over the damp soil, the sound echoing faintly in the quiet woods. Every step seemed to peel away a layer of numbness. The higher I climbed, the lighter I felt. When I reached a clearing near the top, I stopped. The view stretched endlessly before me, rolling hills, a distant lake glimmering in the weak sunlight, and clouds drifting lazily above it all. It was beautiful. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something close to peace. I pulled out my camera and started taking photos. The click of the shutter echoed softly through the still air. Each photo felt like a small act of reclaiming something I'd lost, a piece of myself I'd left behind in the chaos. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I realized something important. I had spent weeks mourning what I'd lost, but I hadn't thought about what I could gain. This was a new beginning, even if it had come from something painful. The silence that used to suffocate me now felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was space to heal, to rediscover, to rebuild. When I drove back to the city that night, I didn't feel broken. Not completely. I still had a long way to go, but for the first time, I could see a future that didn't revolve around pain. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The days turned into weeks, and each one felt like a small victory. As I continued to work, take photos, and spend more time hiking alone in the mountains, I began to realize something that I had overlooked for so long. I wasn't defined by my past. I wasn't just Derek Davis, the man who had been betrayed. I was still me, the guy who used to dream big, who had passions outside of his job, and who found solace in the quiet beauty of nature. The more I embraced this new routine, the less the weight of my former life with Lisa seemed to haunt me. It didn't vanish overnight, but the pain became something more manageable. I wasn't looking to forget her or what happened between us. I was simply learning to accept it and move forward. One evening, while I was working late at the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. "Derek, I've tried reaching out, but I haven't heard from you. I just wanted to apologize for everything. I know I can't fix it, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for what happened. I miss you." I stared at the message for a while, my finger hovering over the screen. There was a time when I would have called her immediately, begged for answers, tried to fix things. But now, all I could do was sigh and put the phone down. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't filled with resentment either. I had let go of that part of myself. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need her to miss me. I needed to live for myself, not for the past. I didn't reply to her message. It wasn't that I didn't care about Lisa, deep down, I always would. But I had come to understand that our love had run its course. It wasn't something I could fix with a simple conversation or an apology. It was something that had already been broken beyond repair. That night, I realized I had stopped waiting for closure. The truth was, closure didn't come from someone else. It came from within. It was the moment I finally accepted that our chapter had ended and that it was okay to let go. A week later, while I was out hiking again, I ran into Mark, the friend who had told me about Lisa's struggles after everything had come to light. We hadn't spoken much since the separation, but he was always a good listener, so I didn't mind the unexpected company. "Derek," he said, clapping me on the back, "you're looking good, man. It's good to see you out here again." I smiled, shrugging a little. "I'm just taking it one day at a time." Mark nodded, looking out at the view. "I can tell. Honestly, I think it's good for you to be doing this. It's like you're really finding yourself again." I let out a breath, letting the wind carry it away. "Yeah, I think I am. It's strange, though. I thought I would never be able to get past the pain of everything. But now, it's like I'm learning to live again." He grinned. "Well, you've always been tough. I knew you'd make it through." I laughed, though it felt like an understatement. I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to feel like myself again. Not the man who had been betrayed, not the husband who had lost everything, but a person who could still move forward, still find joy in small things. As we hiked along the trail, I felt lighter, freer than I had in months. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ground, and I realized just how far I'd come. I had found something in the stillness of the woods, something that had been buried for so long. I had found peace. When I returned to the city, I didn't feel like the same man who had walked out of that house months ago. I felt like someone new, a person who had embraced change, who had faced the hardest parts of life head-on and was still standing. I took the next few months to focus on rebuilding my life. I spent more time with friends, took up photography again, and even started taking weekend trips to new places. I wasn't in a hurry to move on, but I was open to the possibility of something new, something better. Somewhere along the way, I realized that life wasn't about holding on to the past, no matter how painful it had been. It was about learning from it, growing from it, and letting it make you stronger. I had started over in so many ways, and while I didn't have all the answers, I knew one thing for sure, I was finally ready to live for myself. I wasn't looking for someone to fix me, to make things right. I was the one who had to do that. And with each passing day, I could feel myself getting closer to the person I was meant to be. For the first time in a long time, I was okay with that.